If you're shooting video on your Canon M50 and you're trying to figure out which autofocus mode to use, this video is for you.
3, 2, 1.
Here we go!
Hi and welcome back to DIY Film with Merle Becker, the channel where I help you make better videos. As you probably know by now, I've got a bonus filmmaking tip at the end of the video, so stick around, my friends. Alright, so you're filming on your M50 or maybe a different Canon camera and you see there are a few different autofocus modes on there, but you're not sure which one to use or when to use it. The good news is the Canon mirrorless cameras actually have some really great autofocus modes. They're actually a big improvement over the DSLR cameras that came before them. And choosing the right autofocus mode is easy once you understand how each one works. First, I should say that this video is geared towards filmmaking, so I'll be focusing, no pun intended, on the movie mode and how autofocus works with it. However, as we all know, you can still shoot movies while you're in the other modes by hitting the button with the red dot. But most filmmakers will be working in video mode, so that's what I'm using. Also, I'm on a Canon M50 here, but most of the Canon cameras have similar menus. And also, a camera's autofocus will sometimes work a little differently depending on the lens you have on there, or if you're using a lens adapter. So that's something to be aware of. And lastly, I should start out by saying that if you're on an M50 and you're shooting in 4K mode, some of this information won't apply to you. And the reason is that the M50 autofocus is limited when you're in 4K mode. More specifically, in 4K mode, the M50 uses contrast detect autofocus instead of dual pixel autofocus. Dual pixel autofocus is a little more responsive, but dual pixel is only found in the higher resolutions on Canon's higher end cameras. Put simply, if you need to vlog in 4K, the M50 isn't your camera, because the autofocus isn't as reliable in 4K. But if you're shooting B-roll or something where you can control the focus manually, the M50 will work just fine. Okay, so let's dive in. First, let's make sure we're not in 4K so we can go through the autofocus modes. On the mode dial on the top of the camera, select Movie Mode, which is the little camera icon. Then press the menu button on the back of the camera. Then let's go to the Resolution menu, which is in the red camera menu. You can move left and right by pressing the left or right side of the selector circle on the back of the camera. Then go to the first submenu in the red section. Go down to Movie Recording Quality. Select it by hitting Set in the middle of the selector circle, then go to Movie Recording Size and go over to the option that says FHD 2398. Okay, so now that we're in a lower resolution than 4K, we can take a look at the autofocus modes and explain how they work. So hit Menu to take you back to the main menus, and your autofocus modes are all listed in the fourth submenu of the red section. So first, let's make sure autofocus is turned on. You can do this in a couple ways. One is by going to the last option of the fourth submenu and changing the focus mode to autofocus. Another way to change it to autofocus while you're shooting is to press the left side of the selection circle in the back. You'll see it says manual focus or autofocus on the bottom of the screen when you change it. So you've selected autofocus in the focus mode section at the bottom. Now go back up to the autofocus method option, which is second from the top. Here you see the three main autofocus methods available to you in video mode. 1. Face tracking. Face tracking autofocus is great for vlogging or filming yourself or another moving subject. And here's how it works. So you'll see the area that the camera is using to determine accurate focus is denoted by this little white square here. In face tracking, this little square will lock on your face or any other object you tell it to, and it will move with you or your moving subject. That means in face tracking mode, if you're vlogging, you can simply hold the camera up to your face and the camera will lock focus. And you can move around and you'll stay in focus. Or if you're filming a moving object that's not a face, you can simply tap the area on the touchscreen that you want to stay in focus and the camera will recognize it. And it will follow this area as the subject moves. Now, the M50 has an additional feature which increases the accuracy of face detection, and it's called eye detection autofocus. With eye detection autofocus, the camera will go one step further and detect the subject's eyes. Then it locks on the eyes rather than the face. This provides for a little more accuracy because the eye is a smaller, more accurate target. Now, one thing to note is that eye detection mode is available when the M50 is in modes other than the video mode for some reason. That being said, I've found that plain old face detection mode works just fine for me when I'm shooting myself or a moving subject in video mode. Also, keep in mind that you can shoot video while in modes other than video by just pressing that same red button. So let's check out eye detection quickly. To turn it on, switch the top mode dial to M for manual still shooting, and go to the 6th submenu in the red section. Scroll down to Eye Detection Autofocus and hit Set. Scroll down to Enable and hit Set. And if you want, you can have continuous autofocus on as well, which will keep it focusing. So below Eye Detection, select Continuous Autofocus and change it to Enable. Now, if you do a quick test, you can see that the camera is indeed locking onto your eyeball because you see this little square inside of the larger one around your eye. Alright, let's switch back to movie mode so we can go through the other two autofocus settings. Go to the top dial and switch it back to movie mode. So the main difference between face detection modes and the next two modes is that the zone doesn't move with your subject in the next two modes. So these are best used when your subject is not moving. So let's start with zone autofocus. Zone autofocus is the middle one here with the brackets. Select it and hit Menu to get out of the menu. And zone autofocus basically lets you pick the area or zone that you want in focus, and it just holds the focus there. Or more precisely, the camera focuses on the closest subject in the zone that you select and it holds focus on it. So once you've found the area that you want your camera to focus on, to get the camera to focus, press the shutter button down halfway. Now you can move the focus area box in a few ways. The first one is by the touchscreen. You can simply drag the box to where you want. Or say that it's cold out and you're wearing mittens, you can also hit the little autofocus point selection button on the right, and you can press on the edges of the circle on the back to move the box around. Or if you want the box to be dead center, you can hit the info button and it'll center itself. Also, after you've pressed that autofocus point selection button, you can use that top dial to zoom in to get a closer look at your selection point, or you can check your focus. And this little magnifying glass icon down here on the touchscreen does the same thing. And voila, the closest item in your zone is in focus. Okay, let's check out the last mode, the single point autofocus. So the single point autofocus is really like the zone autofocus, but it selects a smaller area. Your M50 has 99 autofocus points and up to 143 autofocus points depending on the lens you use. And when you use single point autofocus, you can move your focus point to any one of these available points. Single point autofocus is great for pinpointing your focus on a specific part of your image. Which begs the question, when would you use zone autofocus and when would you use single point? Well, zone might be a better choice if you're shooting a group of objects or a landscape, and single point might be a better choice if you're shooting a small object. Also, single point might be a better choice in lower light situations because you're helping the camera pinpoint the area of focus rather than asking it to analyze the area to find the closest object, which is a little harder in the dark. To be honest, I find that single point is a little more accurate, so I tend to use it more often. But it's a matter of personal preference and the situation that you're shooting in. Okay, so that's a breakdown of the autofocus modes. To review, face tracking moves with your subject, great for vlogging. Zone autofocus doesn't move with the subject, good for landscape or filming groups. Single point autofocus doesn't move with the subject, good for filming small objects. All right, so let's do the tip. If you're shooting in 4K and you're unable to take advantage of the M50's autofocus features, you're likely going to need to focus manually. And one way to help you get crisp manual focus is by turning on the manual focus peaking. Here's why. Sometimes you have a little trouble seeing what area is in focus on that little LCD screen, even with 20/20 vision. And with peaking, the camera will light up the area that's in focus by making it the color of your choice. And that can be a huge help. So, for example, here I've turned on manual focus peaking and chosen red. And I'm trying to focus on this lens cap, which looks like it's focused properly on the LCD screen. But the focus peaking tells me that the area in front of it is the area that's really in focus. So I now know to move my camera back a hair to get that cap in focus. So here's how you turn it on. Hit Menu, go to the 5th submenu and hit Set, select Peaking and On. Then select high so the colored area is really visible. And lastly, pick what color you want the focus area to be in. I recommend that if you're shooting something that has a lot of red in it, choose a color other than red, like blue or yellow, so that the focus peaking really shows up, and vice versa. And voila! Now you have a little help when it comes to your manual focus. And you can rock that 4K setting with a little more confidence. Alright folks, I think I've given you plenty to focus on. If you do own an M50 and you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out my other Canon camera videos, including one on how to white balance. And as always, if you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe and hit the bell so you know when the next one is posted. And I will catch you next time.